You've seen the remakes, the reboots, the modern Tarzans with personal trainers and CGI. But somehow, every single one gets measured against a swimmer from Chicago who never went to acting school. Johnny Weissmuller became Tarzan in 1932. That was over 90 years ago. And yet, when someone mentions Tarzan today, most people still see his face. They hear his yell. They picture his silhouette swinging through the trees. Here's what makes that so strange. Weissmuller wasn't even trying to be an actor. He was an Olympic champion. 5 gold medals. World records that seemed impossible. MGM didn't hire him because he could deliver Shakespeare. They hired him because his body moved differently than any other human being on film. And there's a specific reason why that movement became untouchable. Something about the way his swimming career shaped his physique created a look no gym routine could replicate. But here's the part that really matters. It wasn't just his body. It was timing. It was sound. It was a personality that felt innocent when Hollywood was anything but. And it was one behind-the-scenes decision that locked him into film history forever. Let's go back to where it started. Not in Hollywood. In a freezing Chicago pool. Johnny Weissmuller wasn't born in America. He came from a tiny village in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His parents were ethnic Germans. Poor, working class, desperate for a better life. In 1905, when Johnny was barely a year old, they sailed to Ellis Island on the SS Rotterdam. First stop, Windber, Pennsylvania. Cold country, cramped housing. His father worked brutal hours. Then they moved to Chicago, hoping the city would offer more opportunity. It didn't. His father left the family when Johnny was young. His mother, Elizabeth, worked whatever job she could find. Johnny dropped out of school to help support them. And then something happened that should have ended his story before it began. He got sick. Some accounts say polio. Others suggest a similar debilitating condition. Either way, the doctor gave Elizabeth one instruction: get him swimming. Lake Michigan became his therapy pool. Fullerton Beach, freezing water, no supervision. And Johnny discovered something nobody expected. He was fast, unnaturally fast. By age 11, he was lying about his age to join the YMCA. Minimum age was 12. He didn't care. He wanted to race. And he started winning everything. Local coaches noticed. The Illinois Athletic Club recruited him, one of the best swim programs in America. By his late teens, Johnny Weissmuller was setting national records. By 1924, he was on his way to the Paris Olympics. A sick immigrant kid who could barely afford a swimsuit. And then he did something nobody in swimming history had done before. 3 gold medals, 3 Olympic records, and a 100-meter freestyle time that made European coaches accuse him of cheating. He hadn't. He just figured out how to move through water like nobody else. For years later, Amsterdam, 2 more golds, another world record in the relay, 5 Olympic gold medals total, 67 world records across his career. He never lost a 100-meter freestyle race in competition during his prime. Not once. By 1929, newspapers called him the fastest human being in water. And that's when Hollywood started paying attention. Not for his acting, for his shoulders. A writer named Cyril Hume saw him at a swimming exhibition, told MGM they had to see this guy. MGM was developing Tarzan the Ape Man. They needed someone who looked like he belonged in the jungle, someone comfortable in almost no clothing, someone whose body wouldn't look fake on camera. Weissmuller was already under contract as a BVD underwear model. That tells you everything about his physique. MGM had to negotiate with BVD to release him. The deal? They'd feature Greta Garbo and other stars in BVD ads. Hollywood's first major cross-promotion built around one man's body. And that body came from years in the water. But here's the question nobody asked at the time. Why did a swimmer's physique work so perfectly for Tarzan? The answer is in the way his muscles were built, and the way black and white film captured them. Stand Johnny Weissmuller next to a modern bodybuilder. He'd look smaller, leaner, less bulky, but put him on a 1930s movie screen, and he looked like a Greek statue come to life. Here's why. Swimming builds muscle differently than lifting weights. His shoulders were wide, naturally broad from years of pulling his body through water. His lats, the muscles along his back, flared out, giving him that V-shaped torso. Narrow waist, strong core, long, lean legs, and arms that looked powerful without looking pumped. He stood about 6'3", tall for the era. Cameras loved his proportions. Black and white film emphasized contrast, shadows and highlights. Muscle definition without bulk. His body had natural symmetry, nothing overdeveloped, nothing out of balance. And because he'd never lifted heavy weights, his muscles looked functional, like they existed for movement, not show. When he stood still on those MGM jungle sets, the camera could hold on him for seconds. No awkward posing, no flexing, just a man standing there looking completely at ease. Directors noticed something else. His posture. Swimmers develop a specific way of holding their bodies. Chest open, shoulders back, head neutral. It's a biomechanical necessity in the water. On land, it made him look confident, calm, like he owned every frame. The jungle sets at MGM were built with artificial vines, painted backdrops, and water tanks. But when Weissmuller moved through them, something clicked. He didn't look like an actor on a set. He looked like he lived there, like the environment made sense for his body. His skin had a natural tan. His hair stayed slicked back. The film grain softened everything just enough. And then there was the way he wore the costume. A loincloth, nothing else. Most actors would have looked ridiculous, self-conscious. Weissmuller looked like that's how he always dressed. Audiences in 1932 had never seen anything like it. Not on that scale. Not with that kind of presence. His body became the template, the standard, the image people carried in their heads for decades. But a great body only gets you so far. Plenty of actors had great bodies. What made Weissmuller impossible to replace was something nobody could train, the way he moved. And that came from one specific thing: 20 years of elite swimming. Watch Weissmuller run across the jungle floor in those early Tarzan films. His gait is smooth, no wasted motion. His arms swing naturally. His stride is long and relaxed. Now watch later Tarzans. They're trying, running hard, looking athletic, but it doesn't feel the same. Here's why. Weissmuller's movement came from swimming, not acting class. Swimmers develop a rhythm, a pacing instinct. They learn to move efficiently, not dramatically. On camera, that translated into something directors called effortless grace. He didn't look like he was performing action. He looked like he was just existing. When he climbed trees, his arms and core did the work. No strain in his face. When he swung on vines, and he did many of those stunts himself, his timing was perfect. He'd grip the vine, pull himself up, and release at the exact moment to carry forward. It looked easy. That's what made it iconic. Effort ruins the illusion. Ease creates magic. His swimming background gave him something else too: body awareness in 3 dimensions. Swimmers learn to control their position in space. Roll, rotate, adjust angles mid-motion. That meant Weissmuller could hit his marks, adjust the camera, and still look natural. Directors could shoot long takes. No quick cuts to hide awkwardness. MGM built entire sequences around his movement. Swimming scenes, diving scenes, underwater fights. In one film, he swims across a river with a full-grown chimp on his back. Looks completely calm. That's not acting. That's 20 years of conditioning. His body knew how to stay relaxed under load. Here's a small behind-the-scenes detail from the MGM lot. Stagehands would watch him rehearse on the jungle set, practicing his vine swings between takes. He'd do the same motion 15, 20 times, never getting frustrated, just refining the timing. Other actors would have gotten bored. Weissmuller treated it like training, repetition until it was smooth, and that smoothness became his signature, the thing people remembered. Modern Tarzans try to look more athletic, more muscular, more aggressive, but they can't replicate what Weissmuller had: a body that had learned economy of motion over 2 decades. You can't fake that in a gym. You can't learn it in stunt rehearsal. It's the difference between someone who moves for a living and someone who's learned moves for a role. But even perfect movement wouldn't have made Weissmuller unforgettable on its own. What sealed his place in history was a sound. One single sound that became more famous than any line of dialogue. And the way that sound was created, that's where the real Hollywood magic happened. Close your eyes and think of Tarzan. What's the first thing you hear? That yell, that impossibly high, warbling, echoing call that sounds like no human voice should sound. Johnny Weissmuller didn't invent it alone, but he gave it the foundation. Here's how it happened. MGM needed a signature sound for their new jungle hero. Something primal. Something audiences would recognize instantly. Something no other character had. Weissmuller told the sound team he had an idea. Something from his childhood in Chicago. German beer halls. Family picnics. Men yodeling after a few drinks. He'd grown up hearing that kind of high, sustained call, and he could do a version of it. So he stood in front of a microphone at MGM and let it rip. The sound engineer, Douglas Shearer, recorded it. Then he went to work. He slowed the recording down, sped it up, reversed sections of it, layered it over itself. He added echo. He adjusted pitch. He created what's technically called a palindrome sound. The second half of the yell is the first half played backward. That's why it has that surreal symmetry. No human being could make that sound live, but audiences didn't know that. They just heard it and believed. The yell debuted in Tarzan the Ape Man in 1932. Audiences lost their minds. It was primal, otherworldly. It felt dangerous and heroic at the same time, and it became instantly iconic. Kids in schoolyards tried to copy it. Comedians parodied it. Carol Burnett famously imitated it on her TV show decades later. It became part of American culture. Here's what makes the yell so important. It didn't just define Tarzan. It defined Weissmuller's Tarzan. Every actor who's played Tarzan since has had to deal with that sound. Some tried to recreate it. Some tried to make their own version. None of them stuck. Because the yell wasn't just a sound effect. It was proof that Weissmuller's Tarzan existed in a different world. A world where a man could call across miles of jungle and animals would respond. It sold the fantasy. And it did it in 3 seconds of audio. Legally, that yell is still protected. Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated owns the trademark. It's been used in documentaries, parodies, commercials, always tied back to Weissmuller. Even people who've never seen a Tarzan movie know that sound. That's cultural permanence. But here's the thing about Weissmuller that's easy to miss. He wasn't loud. He wasn't brash. Off camera, he was quiet, gentle, almost shy. And that contrast made him even more compelling. Because audiences saw a man who didn't need to prove anything. He just was. Hollywood in the 1930s was full of tough guys, actors playing gangsters, cowboys, soldiers, men who projected aggression, dominance, swagger. That was the formula. Johnny Weissmuller didn't fit that mold, and somehow that made him perfect for Tarzan. People who worked with him described the same traits over and over. Gentle, soft-spoken, loyal. Johnny Sheffield, the kid who played Boy in the Tarzan film, later said working with Big John was one of the highlights of his life. He said Weissmuller had a presence that influenced him deeply, not through intimidation, through quiet confidence. Directors noticed something strange. Weissmuller was almost bland in rehearsals, low energy, distracted, but the second the camera rolled, something shifted. He came alive, not in a theatrical way, in a focused way, like he'd found his element. It's the same thing elite athletes describe. The moment a race starts, everything else disappears. Weissmuller wasn't performing Tarzan. He was channeling the same focus he used in the pool. That focus read as authenticity. Audiences felt like they were watching a real person, not a performance. And here's where his personality mattered most. He had no interest in Hollywood fame games. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't cultivate a bad boy image. He just showed up, did the work, and went home. For kids watching those films, He became a hero, not because he was loud or violent, because he was steady. For adults, he represented something rare in Hollywood. Innocence, not naivety. Innocence. A man who didn't seem corrupted by the industry, who still felt like the athlete they'd read about in the papers. That image almost got destroyed once. Early in his Tarzan run, MGM considered replacing him. There were rumors, contract disputes, studio politics, the usual Hollywood machinery. And for a few months, it looked like Weissmuller might lose a role that defined him. What saved him? Audience reaction. Test screenings for potential replacements flopped. People didn't want another Tarzan. They wanted him. The studio got the message. Weissmuller stayed. And over the next decade, he made 6 films for MGM that became the gold standard. But those films didn't succeed just because of one man. They succeeded because MGM built a world around his strengths. A world that felt real, even when it was completely artificial. And that world became the template for every jungle adventure that followed. MGM didn't just cast Weissmuller. They built an entire production system around him. The studio had backlit jungle sets, acres of artificial trees, vines, and water features, but they also shot on location. Florida's Silver Springs became a second home for the Tarzan crew. Crystal clear water, real sunlight, actual wildlife. The camera captured it all. The first film, Tarzan the Ape Man, came out in 1932. It was a phenomenon, not because of the script. Edgar Rice Burroughs hated the script, hated the "me, Tarzan, you Jane" dialogue, but audiences loved it because it gave them something they'd never seen before. A man who looked like he genuinely belonged in the wild, who moved like an animal, who seemed free. Maureen O'Sullivan played Jane. The chemistry between them was real, warm, almost innocent. They weren't sexualized, despite the minimal costumes. They felt like a couple surviving together. The films introduced Boy, Tarzan and Jane's adopted son. Johnny Sheffield, the young actor, became part of the family. The 3 of them created a dynamic that felt genuine, not Hollywood fake. Genuine. MGM leaned into Weissmuller's strengths. Long swimming sequences, diving scenes, physical stunts. They choreographed fights that looked real because Weissmuller's body moved like an athlete's, not a stuntman's. And they used animals, real chimpanzees, real elephants. Trained, but real. The interaction between Weissmuller and the chimps became iconic. He treated them like co-stars. One chimp, Cheetah, became almost as famous as Weissmuller. The comedy relief, the loyal sidekick. Here's a small detail that shows MGM's commitment. Tarzan's New York Adventure, made in 1942, had the lowest budget of the series, $700,000. By Hollywood standards, that was nothing, but it grossed nearly $3 million worldwide. That's a massive return. Why? Because audiences trusted the formula. They knew what they were getting, and they loved it. Families watched these films together. Kids saw Tarzan as a hero. Parents saw him as escapism. It was the Depression, then World War II. People needed fantasy. They needed a world where good guys won. Weissmuller's Tarzan gave them that, week after week, film after film. And then, in the late 1940s, the MGM series ended. Weissmuller moved to RKO for a few more Tarzan films. But the magic had peaked. Hollywood was changing. Audiences were changing. And a new generation of actors started taking on the role. Strong, handsome, capable, but none of them could escape the shadow of the man who defined it first. Lex Barker took over the role in 1949. Tall, handsome, well-built, a solid actor. He made 5 Tarzan films. They did fine at the box office, but nobody called him the definitive Tarzan. Then came Gordon Scott, more muscular than Weissmuller, more classically Hollywood handsome. He made 6 Tarzan films. Some were decent, but again, the comparison was always there. He's good, but he's not Weissmuller. That phrase appeared in review after review. Later, Jock Mahoney, Mike Henry, Ron Ely in the 1960s TV series. All capable, all athletic, all trying to bring something new to the role. But here's the problem. They were playing a character. Weissmuller had been the character. There's a difference, and audiences felt it even if they couldn't explain it. Miles O'Keefe played Tarzan in 1981. Bodybuilder physique. Looked like a comic book drawing. The film flopped. Critics and audiences said the same thing. Too much muscle. Not enough soul. Christopher Lambert played him in 1984. More emotional depth. More articulate. More modern. Better reviews. But still, the older generation shook their heads. Not the real Tarzan. Even Disney's animated Tarzan in 1999 used movement references that echoed Weissmuller's style. The way animated Tarzan swings through trees. The way he moves on all fours. It's all based on the 1930s films. Here's why none of them surpassed Weissmuller. He created 3 templates at once. The physical template, the movement template, the sound template. Every Tarzan since has had to navigate those 3 things. And most focus on just one. They'll get the body right, or the movement right, or they'll try a new take on the yell. But Weissmuller had all 3. Plus one more thing nobody talks about enough. He arrived at the perfect cultural moment. Early sound film, the Great Depression, the hunger for heroes. His Tarzan wasn't violent, wasn't angry, wasn't tortured. He was just strong, calm, and free. That's what people needed in 1932. And that's what kept his films replaying on TV for the next 50 years. Generations grew up watching Weissmuller first. He became the default, the reference point. And once you're the default in popular culture, it's almost impossible to dislodge. Modern actors know this. When they're offered the role, they know they're walking into a comparison they can't win. So they try to make it different, darker, more realistic, more emotionally complex. Sometimes it works as its own thing, but it never replaces the original, because the original wasn't just a performance. It was a cultural imprint, and those don't fade. They just become part of the landscape. Walk into a vintage poster shop. Look for Tarzan imagery. 90% of it uses Weissmuller's silhouette, the broad shoulders, the narrow waist, the relaxed posture. Even when it's not labeled, documentaries about Hollywood's Golden Age always include him, always show the same clips. Him swimming across a jungle river, him swinging on a vine, him standing with Jane and Boy. Modern actors study those clips, not to copy them, to understand why they work. Film students analyze his movement, how he uses body as a storytelling tool. Parents and grandparents still introduce the old films to kids. This is the real Tarzan. They say it with pride, because for them, Weissmuller represents something lost, a kind of Hollywood hero that doesn't exist anymore. Not a superhero, not a tortured antihero, just a strong, calm, decent man in the jungle. There's innocence in those films, not childishness. Innocence, the belief that strength and goodness can coexist. Weissmuller's Tarzan never felt mean, never felt cruel. Even when he fought, it was defensive, protective. That's a specific kind of masculinity, one that modern culture struggles to portray without irony. But in the 1930s, it was aspirational. And for audiences watching those films today, it still feels refreshing. Here's a detail that shows his lasting impact. When he died in 1984 in Acapulco, Mexico treated him like a head of state. They gave him a 21-gun salute, arranged with help from Ted Kennedy and Ronald Reagan. And at his funeral, they played the Tarzan yell 3 times as his coffin was lowered. That yell, that sound, still the most recognizable thing about the character. Even people who've never seen a Tarzan film know it, because it transcended the movies. It became a cultural reference, a shorthand for a jungle hero, a sound that means adventure. And every time someone hears it, they think of Johnny Weissmuller, not the other actors. Him. That's not marketing. That's not studio manipulation. That's organic cultural memory. The kind of legacy you can't buy. You can only earn by being first, being best, and being impossible to forget. But here's the real question, the one that matters most. Why does he still win the comparison? Why, after 90 years, is his Tarzan still the standard? Let's break it down one last time. He wasn't the strongest Tarzan. Later actors lifted heavier weights, had bigger muscles, He wasn't the most trained actor. Others brought Shakespeare, stage experience, dramatic range. He wasn't even the most articulate. The script gave him broken English and simple sentences. But none of that mattered, because Johnny Weissmuller was a foundation. He created the template, the emotional baseline, the physical standard. Here's why that template still works. First, the movement. No actor since has moved with this kind of ease, because no actor since spent 20 years swimming at an Olympic level. That conditioning is irreplaceable. Second, the voice. The yell is still protected by trademark, still instantly recognizable. Every Tarzan comparison starts with, can they do the yell? That's Weissmuller's doing. Third, the charm. He brought athletic credibility. He wasn't pretending to be strong. He was strong. Audiences felt that authenticity. It gave the fantasy a foundation reality. Fourth, the cultural timing. He arrived when sound film was new, when Hollywood was building its mythology. His Tarzan got locked into the cultural memory at the exact moment movies became mass entertainment. Fifth, the innocence. His performance had no cynicism, no winking at the camera, no irony. In an era of irony and deconstruction, that sincerity stands out even more. And sixth, the repetition. His films played on TV for decades. Saturday afternoons, late-night movies, endless reruns. Generation after generation saw him first. He became the default, the original. And once you're the original, comparisons flow backward, not forward. New Tarzans aren't compared to each other. They're compared to him. That's the ultimate proof of dominance. When every conversation about a role starts with your name, when every new actor has to answer the question, but are you as good as Weissmuller? That question has been asked for 90 years. And the answer is always the same. Different, maybe. Interesting, sometimes. But better? No, because Johnny Weissmuller didn't just play Tarzan. He defined him. And definitions don't change. They just become the standard everyone else has to meet. You're not going to see another Tarzan like Johnny Weissmuller. Not because Hollywood can't cast athletes. Because the world that created him doesn't exist anymore. The timing, the technology, the cultural hunger, it all came together once. In a Chicago pool, on an MGM soundstage, in a palindrome yell that still echoes, and somewhere in a vintage movie playing on a Sunday afternoon, he's still swinging through those trees, still looking like he was born there, still making every other Tarzan seem like they're just visiting. Johnny Weissmuller didn't just play Tarzan, he defined him.